Hey guys, welcome back. So today we want to talk about red dot sights versus magnification and talk about the advantages and disadvantages of each system. We've brought out most of the popular magnification type optics that are available out there, and then we've brought out one red dot sight, which is a name point that is a sight that most people are least aware of the name brand of. But before we get started with today's video, guys, if you enjoy the content that we produce here at the Military Arms channel, please take a moment to become part of our Patreon family. There is a link in the video description below. If you become part of our Patreon family, you'll get early access to videos like this. You'll have direct access to me. I answer all private communications, amongst some other perks. So please follow that link down below. With that being said, let's get started with today's video talking about red dot sights versus magnified optics and the benefits and detractors of each different system. So many of you watching this video may not know what iron sights are or what they are originally used for, and I'm just kind of saying that tongue in cheek, but iron sights are how the world's militaries fought wars up until the 21st century for the most part. Basically, you have a rear sight, an aperture or V-notch, and then you have a front post or a blade. You would align the front post of the blade with the center of the V-notch or the center of the rear aperture, center that on your target, and fire. But such sighting systems have their limitations. Low light and inclement weather are two such limitations where these sights don't work very well, especially at range. So militaries have been looking for ways to improve hit probability, and the militaries of the world started to seriously look at this type of stuff. Early red dot sights, for example, early 70s, late 60s, early 70s, and they would use tritium and light gathering sources, light filaments to make the red dot. But in those early optics, and we have a video on this on the Armson red dot sights, but you couldn't look through them. They were occluded eye gun sights, meaning you would shoot with both eyes open and the dot would superimpose. But if you try to look through the optic itself, you would just see a black surface with a dot appearing in the middle of it. You had to open both eyes to actually be able to use that sight. Later, electronics have become more efficient, where you could actually have electronics like this aim point you see here, where it will literally run for 5+ years on a single battery, when the tritium in those old sights was only good for 7, maybe 10 years. Here you can just swap out a battery to get your red dot back. With the old sights, you'd have to send them into the factory and get the tritium replaced. So the electronic red dot sight really was the game changer, especially the red dot sights that became electrically efficient. The downside to the red dot sight, however, is that at range, it doesn't give you enough visibility on target to actually either be able to see your target or what's going on around your target area. The red dot sight really shines in CQB, or close distance fighting scenarios, inside structures, outside between 200 yards and inside of 200 yards. Red dot sights are very fast and effective, and are intended again to be used with both eyes open, so you have full situational awareness, but they lack that capability of actually seeing what's going on downrange. And that becomes a problem in military applications when you're looking at enemies that are trying to take cover, hide from you wearing camouflage. And if they're shooting at you, they're probably going to be taking cover and presenting the smallest target possible. So iron sights and red dot sights are less than ideal when trying to engage targets like that. Now go into the civilian setting, where red dot sights really work well because they're going to be useful in that legal area of the law where you can claim self-defense. If you take a shot at somebody in the civilian world at 300 meters or further, you're going to have a hard time convincing a jury of your peers that that was a justified shooting, that that person was posing a threat to you. But at close quarters, inside of your home, inside of any type of structure, outside at, again, inside 200 yards or so, you can make the case for self-defense, especially if the other party's armed and shooting at you. So red dot sights make a lot of sense for the civilians, but they don't make as much sense for military, because while they're great at CQB and city fighting, they're not so good at distance, contrasting two different places like Fallujah against the wide open spaces between mountains in Afghanistan. You have two different scenarios there, and the red dot sight falls way short on that long distance side. So that's why people came up with magnified optics. And this is one example of a magnified optic, but we're going to show you multiple different examples of magnified optics out here this afternoon. And at the end of this video, I'm going to tell you which system I prefer and why. This is an LPVO, and we'll talk about the LPVO next. I get asked all the time, Mac, how can I get involved in the firearms industry? Well, there's no easy answer, but one way you can easily get involved in the firearms industry is to become a certified gunsmith. Modern Gun School has been teaching gunsmiths since 1945. It is accredited college, and also if you're a veteran and have a GI Bill, you can use that to enroll at Modern Gun School. So please swing by and check them out. I have a link in the video description below. One of the options you're going to see out there for magnification will be the LPVO, or the low power variable optic sight system like you see here. Now this is one of the new PLX compacts from Primary Arms. Will be hitting the market here soon. This is easily one of the best LPVOs I've ever seen. This is one of the most clear optics, first focal plane optics I've ever used. When you look through this with both eyes open, there's zero color shift, zero distortion around the edges. It's just absolutely amazing. So when these things hit the market, I highly recommend you guys check one out. But this optic goes from 1 power all the way up to 8 power. The early LPVOs would generally be 1 to 4 power, then we got 1 to 6, then 1 to 8, and there are some 1 to 10s out there. But people will debate whether or not the 1 power is a true 1 power, which means it has zero magnification. So in theory, if you look through it, it's as if you're looking through nothing and just a reticle magically appears because there's no magnification or shift or color distortion or anything. And this optic is really, really close to that. So when I shoot both eyes open at 1 power on this, it does look like there's a reticle just hanging out there in space. And it doesn't really look as though there's any type of magnification going on. But then I have the ability to quickly crank that magnification up to 8 power because it's a first focal plane. That reticle will increase in size with the magnification so that it is easily able to use ranging reticles, so I can figure out the range of a target, and then I also know what my hold is for a target at range. These came about, you would see them in, gun gamers were using them, the military started using them, but their downside is their size and weight. Now this one's extremely lightweight for an LPVO, but generally speaking, the LPVOs are fairly hefty, a little bit heavy, and then you have the mounting system as well. And so you'd see people get really spindly, spidery mounting systems for them and trying to reduce that weight as much as possible. But despite the fact it would still have 1 power, you saw a lot of guys do this, which is a red dot offset. So the theory being, well, I'm not going to use my magnified optic for engagement at close range. I'm going to tilt the rifle sideways, and I'm going to use this RMR for super close range engagements, say, 7 to 15 to 50 yards. And then if I'm going to engage a target at range, I can figure out what that range is that I want to shoot at, set my magnification appropriately, and start shooting. If I want to scan the target area and identify a target, I can crank it all the way up to 8 power. If I want to engage, I can crank it down a little bit, totally up to the user. And so this is a very flexible system. But again, it comes at the cost of size and weight. This is still, even though this is a lightweight system, this is still very big and a little bit clunky, especially if you run the RMR out here. Personally, I don't care for the RMR. I would just use this at 1 power with both eyes open. But that's one option. But there's multiple options out there that you guys might want to consider. So let's take a look at the next one. Let's take a step back here for a moment. Let's talk again about red dot sights. Here we have a Holosun red dot sight, and this was sent to me by Primary Arms. This red dot sight has a Holosun 3-power magnification unit sitting behind it. This came about, and you'll see these being used by military, law enforcement, and civilians alike. These came about to solve that problem of how do I identify a target downrange at distance better? How do I make a more precise shot at range better using a red dot sight? Well, you could flip the magnifier to the side, run it with a red dot sight for CQB, and then if you needed to take that shot at range, you could flip this over, or if you wanted to see your target area, see what was going on, you could flip this over, and now you have the benefit of 3-power magnification. The downside to this is size, weight, and the fact that when you flip it to the side, you have this big device hanging off the side of your weapon, which becomes a snag point. And so I've never been a fan of this particular setup. It's useful in terms of I like shooting it, I like the functionality that it brings, but the detractor is that it's so big and cumbersome with it hanging off the side, it's not something that I would personally run on a self-defense rifle. Unity Tactical took a look at this problem, and they came up with an ingenious solution. So here we see a 3-by magnifier, but instead of flipping to the side, it simply squats down. We've raised the EOTech up through a Unity Tactical riser mount, and this is a Unity Tactical fold-away for the magnification that we have here, which is 3-by as well. So now I can use it as a red dot sight, and then if I want to use magnification, I flip it up. Now this does solve the problem for me of having that, unwieldy thing hanging off the side of my rifle becoming a potential snag point, especially jumping in and out of vehicles and things like that. This tucks it away nicely and keeps it in a slimmer profile so that it makes much more sense. But again, the downside to this type of a setup is look at the size and complexity of it. Is that what you want on your defensive rifle? I go back and forth. I like shooting this type of a setup, but I can't get over the overall size and just the complexity of the system. I don't really favor this system. Here's an old solution to the problem, and this is the Acog. A lot of military guys and gals have used the Acog, and this makes a lot of sense for military applications. This is a 4-power magnified optic. It's very small, lightweight, and would seem to be a good design. Now, we've had bad experiences with them losing zero, and I know this is a problem in the military as well, and you have all sorts of fixes for it. Zero the sight, tap it with a 2x4, shoot it, if it moves, re-zero it, tap it with a 2x4, and eventually you get the reticle to settle and the gun will stop losing zero. But those flaws aside, this system made a lot of sense, and for its time, it was very small, compact, lightweight, and offered a solid solution to the soldier who would be fighting at CQB. They would train the soldiers to use the magnified reticle with both eyes open with a specific hold for CQB, but they also had iron sights integrated into them in the early ACOGs, and later they came up with a mount system for the ACOG that would put a red dot RMR on top of it, so you would have a red dot up here, your magnified optic down here. Again, a very interesting solution. This is very durable, and again, you can't argue with the fact that millions of them have been used globally on military service rifles. So that magnification, along with a reticle that has a ballistic holdover for you at distance, is just something that makes a whole lot of sense for an infantry soldier. And that's why you would see these being more commonly used than red dot sights as the war or the war on terror dragged out over 20 years. You would see the military is kind of favoring the magnified optic over the red dot sight. So if you follow the channel at all, you'll know that I'm a big fan of the SIG Virtus. A version of this just became the U.S. military's new service rifle, the M5, but it chambers a 6.8 by 51 cartridge. But overall, it's pretty much the same rifle, just upscaled for the larger cartridge. I've been shooting this rifle for some time. It's become a favorite of mine. It's my go-to rifle. You've seen it here before on the channel. But on this particular model that I opened the video up with, I have a red dot sight on it. So you've seen me working with red dot sights, and then you've seen me working with this as of late, because this is a new development in the market. This is the primary arms, and this is a 3-power magnified optic. So this has a very clean 3-power magnification that is non-adjustable, but what it gives you is a very small unit, about the same size as a red dot sight, but it gives you a magnified optic. It does have illumination. It will work the illumination in most light settings. Like today, it's overcast. I can clearly see the illumination. If you turn that illumination on its brightest setting and look into a brightly lit area that might wash out, you'll probably lose that illumination. So I can't technically say it has daylight illumination, but I don't really use daylight illumination. There's no point to it, in my opinion. It just causes the reticle to blur for me and a lot of people out there. So, and that's why you'll see people on the military ACOGs putting tape over it. They don't want that blooming of the reticle. So low light is the only time that I would even consider using that Eliminator Reticle. So this gives you an etched reticle, which means it operates without a battery. So if the battery on the illumination goes dead, you still have that etched reticle that doesn't change. With a red dot sight, battery goes dead, sight goes down. You can't fix it until you get another battery. With this, you have that etched reticle, so you literally have to physically break the unit before you lose the reticle and the ability to use your optic. And so this really is a game changer to me. I've been able to play with this. This is still just coming to market. I believe they're just starting to take orders now. Don't hold me to that, but I know that they're just now hitting the market. The original 1-power has been out on the market for some time. Very neat, but the 3-power is definitely where it's at. And this is what I prefer on my personal rifle. Now, this is made out of aluminum. Again, it's made by Primary Arms. It has an ACSS reticle in it, which is a very useful reticle. And I've also included a quick detach mount. So if I need to go back to my iron sights, I can very quickly simply by detaching the optic. Now, that's not something that the optic ships with. That's something that you're going to have to add to it, but it uses a standard mount that's compatible with ACOGs. So it's the same mounting pattern, same hole pattern. So you can pick up a quick detach mount for your ACOG and slap it on this Primary Arms 3-power magnified sight, and it'll work for you. And you can see how it cranes back over the fold down sight, and this is a Griffin Armament backup sight that's on the weapon. So to me, this makes the most sense of all the options that you've seen out here this afternoon, and that's why you see it on my go-to rifle. Hopefully these things will become commonly available. They're less than 400 bucks. These things are absolutely amazing, and I really think this is the future of optics for fighting rifles, at least the foreseeable future, especially on the civilian market. Very lightweight, small, again, about the same size as red dot sight, very functional, all aluminum housing, been very durable for me. It holds zero, and it has really good light transmission and clarity, and I can still use it with both eyes open quite easily. It's just an amazing piece of glass. So we've kind of gone through all the options out there, and at the end of the video I promised you I'd tell you what my favorite was, and it is this, for the reasons that I've stated. So I look forward to what your comments are down below, because I know a lot of you are going to have very strong opinions of all the stuff we've shown you here. If we've forgotten something, my apologies. Either I don't have it or it just slipped our mind to bring it out. But this is a comprehensive list, as far as I know, of what is available out there, at least in terms of general setup, right? There are going to be different brands of these optics out there that are available, but in general, they all function about the same. And we've got a pretty good coverage here with today's video. So is there one global standard that would be one size fits all? And the answer to that is no. It boils down to what you think is best for your situation and your application. Now, me personally, I like the 3-power small magnified optic like this primary arms. I think this is the most utilitarian of all the optics I've showed you this afternoon. But if you're an advocate for red dots, I understand that. I used red dots for a long time and advocated for them myself until I started playing with magnified optics. And I really didn't make the switch, even though I liked LCANs and things like that. I didn't really make the switch until this little guy came onto the market, and that changed my thinking considerably. And that's why you're seeing this on my go-to rifle now. But if you are an advocate still of red dot sights, think outside the box. Set your preconceived notions aside and think about the size of the dot and how much of the target it obscures. Think about the lack of the ability to being able to look down range and determine temper and intent of a target that's coming at you at, say, 300 yards. This is a 5.56 rifle. Past 300 yards, it really isn't all that useful. Yes, I can score hits out to 800 yards with a 5.56, but that's not really where it shines. It is intended for intermediate ranges, 300 yards and inside. And this little 3x magnifier gives me that edge of being able to see out to 300 yards and being able to identify a target, being able to take a precise aim and precise shot on said target, where the red dot really doesn't. So think about it. If you live in a city and you say, I just need a red dot sight, I'm not telling you to aim your weapon at people in the city, but take a look at 1 block, 2 blocks, 3 blocks. Look in windows. You don't need to physically aim your rifle because you don't have any magnification. Just look. And then think about the size of that dot. And again, how much of that target area it obscures. Do you have an EOTech, or do you have an RMR with a 6 MOA dot on it because you like that small form factor? It all depends, again, on you, the equipment you've chosen, and what you're trying to accomplish. But I do ask that you take a look at the magnified option, because I do think, again, that this is the future for fighting rifles, at least for the foreseeable future. All right, guys, I look forward to your comments down below. I know it's going to be quite fiery. I look forward to that debate and conversation. If you would like to support us here at the Military Arms Channel, the best possible way is to become part of our Patreon family. There is a link down below. Also, right here on YouTube, you got that little join button underneath the video player you're watching right now. Mash that join button. You can support us right here on YouTube in the age of demonetization. And last but not least, please swing by and check out coppercustom.com. Thank you for 14 years of support, and we'll talk to you guys soon.